And so she has a consulting business called Plateology. Okay, I suppose you could say that a number of different ways based on this. But anyway, she's been an essential part of our family's wellness. And I know that through even interactions with Jimsick Clinic and such, that even Dr. Jimsick has come to appreciate the value of nutrition as one of the 2, 3, or 4 essential legs to the healing process. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your willingness to share your skills and talents, and hopefully will be of benefit to others. So, Jodi Smith.
Absolutely, and you have recipes over here, right, for
Oh, yes.
everybody?
Oh, good.
So that you've got recipes for everything I'm going to prepare for you today. Maybe I ought to take a copy too, just so I make it the way that I wrote it.
Okay.
We all know that sometimes I don't. I like to switch it up.
So, how do you want to do this? So, I'll do it. Just take. Does anyone need one?
Absolutely. We have to take them home and make them.
Okay, so
Yeah.
please.
I want you. I
Take
want
as
you
many
to
as you need.
make notes
Or
on
autographs
here
for
as we
your-
go along, because I'm going
Thank
to
you.
be kind of fast and furious. If you turn to almost the last recipe, the second to the last recipe is the one I'm going to do first, because we're going to let it cook just a little bit. And that's called a breakfast scramble. One of the things that Leanne told me that people were having a lot of trouble with was breakfast. What do we do for breakfast? I'm running out of ideas for breakfast. And she said people just, a lot of times folks can't do eggs, they can't do, there's a lot of can't do's. So I wanted to do a couple of breakfast recipes that would be low sulfur, because I don't know if any of you are dealing with high ammonia levels or sulfur issues, but there are people that are. So I try to take kind of the lowest level, you know what I mean? So to what I do, you can add according to what you're capable and able to do. So I'm going to start with this breakfast scramble. One of the biggest things that we have going on with Lyme is getting enough protein, but not overdoing the protein. We want enough, but not too much. So I'm going to start with some organic ground beef in my skillet. And I'm just going to break it up.
So where do you get your organic ground beef?
I actually get mine from our farm most of the time, but when I can't, I get it at Costco and Kroger. Kroger has Simple Truth, and Costco has their organic. Costco actually is the cheapest. However, you will notice that I am the queen of Kroger. And this is that I've trained my husband to do woohoo stickers. Everywhere we go, we look for woohoo stickers. And I also get all of their coupons. So every week I get at least $1.50 off a pound, or more of meat, whether it's chicken, whether it's turkey. We're going to do a couple different things. So I've got my ground beef going in here. And remember that simple is best whenever we're dealing with Lyme. Anything we can do that's simple and easy and takes very few ingredients. So again, I'm saying you can add to as you desire. I'm going to do this one super simple. Everybody can tolerate salt and they can tolerate pepper. But beyond that, it gets tricky, because if you're low sulfur, then you may not be able to tolerate garlic or onion. So we're going to do meat, beef, this could be turkey, this could be ground chicken, this could be buffalo, this could be lamb. I make it all different ways. It's really fast in the morning, and also you could make it and then have it a couple of times during the week by just reheating. So we'll get this going, and while it's going, I'm going to add a bunch of parsley. Why a lot of parsley? Because parsley is a huge detoxifier. Like cilantro, it holds metals. It also adds flavor, and it adds chlorophyll. And chlorophyll helps to detox our whole system. So you can see I have a good, a good amount of parsley, as much as you like or can tolerate. Now you can put any kind of vegetable in here that you want, but for the low sulfur, I'm going to go ahead and use some zucchini. So I'm going to add some zucchini, and I cut it in small pieces because one, it cooks quick, so it'll cook along with. And then I took a potato and shredded. It looks a little red because, it oxidizes right as you shred it. But I am a huge fan of box shredders. By the time you pull out a food processor and you put it together and take it apart to clean it, it wipes out your whole day. So I have like multiple, little ones, big ones. I just love these. Every time I go to the Goodwill and find one, I buy it because they don't last forever. But they're really awesome. They take just a second. Elizabeth shredded this one for me. So we're going to go ahead and put in our shredded potato. You could do sweet potato, you could do squash, you can do anything. But this is going to give it kind of the breakfast scramble, sort of egg-like texture and approach. together, and then I'm just going to stick the lid on and let it simmer for a little bit to get nice and tender. We'll put a little salt and pepper on it, and it has a wonderful flavor for a breakfast scramble. It's going to remind you of like an egg dish, you know, like if you just did a scrambled egg kind of dish.
So you don't try to bring the meat to a brown color? Or
I don't wait for it to, because what I want it to do, since this doesn't have much flavor, I like it to cook with the vegetables and with the potatoes. It adds a lot more flavor that way. If you brown it all first, then you don't get that flavor to go through the vegetables. So we're going to let this just kind of simmer on here once I get it all mixed up. And see, it looks kind of cool. I mean, it looks like a scramble, like something you would do. But this is a really, I'm a huge fan of one pot dishes, one meal deals. Could you have this with a piece of toast, depending on, you know, how many calories you need and what you need? Of course, you know, do the good millet toast or do one of those to go along with it, and you're going to have plenty of calories and a whole meal deal.
So when do you add your salt and pepper?
I'm just going to add that at the end. I always salt at the end because that way we don't add too much salt. You know, when you're salting at the stove, that salt cooks into a food and you don't taste it. But if you salt at the end, then you'll taste it much more effectively. So while that's going on, I'm going to make a really fast soup. So you're going to think about this as a breakfast. This is what I call it a breakfast scramble. Could you use it at night? Could you use it for lunch? Of course. But you can use it for sure at night. And it's almost, you know, the other day it was soup season. It's not so much soup season today when it's, I think, about 75 degrees outside. But it was soup season, and somewhere I do have a can opener, I know, because I opened one can. Let's see, I put things all along my table so I can just kind of walk along, but I know that there is a, there it is, or I left it over here on the end. So I think there are certain foods that are what I would call comfort foods. And tomato soup is one of those for me. I don't know how many times after Dan's treatment, you know, different than Lyme, but similar with cancer treatment, where he was just like, you know what I feel like? I feel like tomato soup. And I don't know why, but that's a comfort food for so many people. So we're going to take advantage of all this lycopene, and we're going to make a really fast and easy cream of tomato soup. But we're not going to use any, oh, don't even tell me. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come back to the soup. We're going to make our ice cream first, and then I'll have Elizabeth see if she can rinse this out. I have two blender bowls that fit on this one, but I also have a blender. So I have a blender bowl that fits on the blender, and the bowl that fits on the Vitamix. So we can be very creative here. So digress for a second and turn to the peachy ice cream, because we're going to make that instead. I tried to accomplish several goals today, and one of the goals was that, you know, Leanne said, well, everybody always wants goodies. And she said, whenever you do ice cream, they love the different ice creams. So I'm going to break off some of my peaches here. These are frozen organic peaches. And I like to keep them pretty frozen because we want them to add the texture. So I'll have to probably cut them out here because they're pretty frozen. In my blender, or in my Vitamix blender part, I have an avocado. And I'm using the avocado for the richness and the texture. It's going to give it the smooth, rich texture of ice cream. I'm using my peaches because obviously peaches are delicious, and these are wonderful organic peaches, and I just got them right off the tree, peeled them and froze them. So it's nice whenever you can get organic fruit. And fruit is one of the things we want to be probably a little more careful with getting organic. Not everything has to be organic, but peaches are one of the things that they do spray trees pretty heavily. So I try to go with apples and peaches and things like that, make sure that we're getting organic. So we're going to get that in there. I'm trying to kind of judge 2, 4, 6, how many. I don't want to make too much, so we have a bunch left over. And then I've got, did I find out, is everybody okay with stevia for today? Sometimes people can do stevia and
somebody out there said no.
Okay.
Yeah, she said no. She said no, no.
Why did that opportune time? Get a little stir. I use stevia the most of sweeteners, and I do understand its relationship with Lyme, and I don't want you to use it if you're in treatment, because I understand it does pull and it can cause some problems. The reason I use it so much in my cooking is because it is the only sweetener that doesn't change blood sugar. So we want to be really careful that we keep blood sugar levels stable, because sugar feeds every bug. You know that? It feeds cancer, it feeds Lyme, it feeds bacteria, it feeds virus, it feeds fungus. There's nothing sugar doesn't feed. So we want to keep our sugar levels low, and we've got peaches in here, so that's going to add a lot of natural sweetener, but maybe not sweet enough to be ice cream if we don't help it a bit. Now, I told you about those woohoo stickers. It's really nice to get a whole big bottle of stevia clear. Stevia clear is okay, but I don't like it as much unless I'm putting in something that's super flavorful, because it has a little bit of a bitter taste. I like the best the vanilla and the English toffee, because it smooths over that stevia flavor. So if you haven't tried it, try it. And they have like orange flavor and all kinds of flavors. I think, how many different flavors do you guys have at Custom Med? About 1 million, because you use it for all kinds of.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, cola, I mean, they have everything. And I've had some people that have been like, I would die for a Coke. But I'm not going to do it. It's like, we'll take a couple drops of cola stevia if it's really not big of an issue.
Wow.
The cola one, I don't think tastes as much like Coke as the root beer one. I don't drink Coke, so what would I know?
Yeah.
The root beer one tastes just like root beer. You can make a root beer float out of it, just like it. And very similar to the Izzy's, only no sugar. No sugar at all. So just put it in.
Now you get those from Kroger?
You can. Kroger is carrying all of the stevias. All the flavors. In fact, I went in last night to get last minute stuff for you all, and they had a Valencia orange one marked down to $1.99. I was so tickled. Every time I get I just woot, things. You don't use the orange that often, but I love to put the orange in the orange water, the sparkling water, the LaCroix, and it tastes like Orange Crush. I mean, it really does. It's like sometimes you just want bubbles, and that gives you some bubbles.
Yeah.
So I put a little bit of my English toffee in there, and then I'm going to use some coconut milk. Now, one of the things I tell people, when you're looking for the milks that are sugar-free, we're not concerned about calories. In fact, most of my Lyme patients need calories, not less calories. However, if you see the low calories, you know it didn't have sugar. That's the big thing. So I'm going to take, this is the refrigerated kind. You get all different kinds. I will tell you that right now, Kroger has a deal on all the silk milks, and they're $1.99 if you buy 4. So even if you combine together, I mean, you can go through a pretty healthy amount of the alternative milks. $1.99 for a half gallon is a really, really good price. So we're going to add a little bit of milk, and I used the coconut today because it's nice and creamy, and it's going to give us that really nice and creamy texture to our ice cream. And that's all that's in here. Again, remember, simple. I almost feel silly telling you that I'm doing these big And I'm going to take my little plunger, which you all probably have if you have a Ninja or any of those, and I'm just going to make sure that we get it really good and blended. Let's see how good and thick I got it, judging. If it's not thick enough, we just add a little bit more as far as peaches. Just a little more. Put in a little bit more in there, and we'll have our peach ice cream, and then I'll transition to our tomato soup. I like to keep it nice and thick and rich. And, depending on, again, I'm doing things a little weird because I'm just trying to make sure we don't have too much left over, since I've got to go straight to another event.
Jodi, if you wanted to use something different, like frozen mangoes or
any fruit you want. And I think actually the last time I did do mangoes, and so this time I decided to do peaches. I just want to be sure my peaches are good and blended. I'm going to give it one more little scoop here.
So you wouldn't change the recipe for the fruit, anything about the recipe because of the fruit chosen?
Nope. You would just, the only problem with using the berries, which I was going to actually do berries for you, is the color is a little funky. It's a little brownish purple. So, you know, that's the problem with the avocado. If you just close your eyes, it's wonderful. But let's go ahead and put some of this in some bowls. And I'm just going to pass these around. I give this a little stir here. It's smelling good. Really, at home, if you were paying attention to it and you weren't trying to do 4 things at once, you would have this done in about 7 minutes. It really takes very, very little time. And I like to keep the zucchini a little firm. I don't want it to be all total mush. It's nicer if it has a little texture to it. So that's getting done there. Let's.
Can I help you?
That's great. We'll just. I'll let Elizabeth and you both hand out. I'll just put some in here, and then I'm going to have you, if you wouldn't mind, Elizabeth. And we need some spoonos. And about 2,
Smells
2,
good.
4, 5, 6, 7.
Here, Kirk, you want some?
Thank you. I'm just talking
See
to
what you
Leon.
think. Again, sometimes the simplest things. Probably the
Yeah, the color's
too.
kind of weird.
I
I
know,
made
it's
a
a little bit, but
matcha avocado
Really,
ice
it's
cream
like a
one
matcha.
time.
It looks like a green tea. And you know what? A couple of times when I've made these different ice creams, I've actually, instead of using the coconut milk, I've used a tea option, but it's a little more sorbet-ish if you use kind of the tea option. Here, who wants a lot? I really want all this up here.
Everybody but us.
What do you think?
This is really good. Let me pull a shameless plug. Fruit trees do grow in the city, even if you live in the city. I've started planting like cherry trees. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
and you can we actually harvest our own berries after a couple of years.
Yeah. We live on the river, and the animals always get ours, like our peach tree, the raccoons, like, we're waiting.
I know you're trying to tape this
one
and I'm
night they
walking around.
get them all. And then the cherries, the birds get them, you know, and the raccoons, huh?
We haven't had a problem with birds.
Really? Yeah, mostly the raccoons for us, because we live on the river, so.
There you go. All right, Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind, see if you could just rinse this. It doesn't have to be perfect, because I can put tomato over that. It probably tastes great. So while we're waiting on to start on that, I want you to know that making goodies and treats seems to be one of the biggest things that people have trouble with, especially candy. You know, something that's kind of like a candy. So what I did is I have a fudge, sort of fudge recipe. Sorry, trying to keep those peaches frozen. And what I did over here is I took some almond butter. I thought I brought the jar. Must have left it in the fridge. The story of my life is whatever I leave behind. But I took some almond butter, and I used the chunky, because in this particular recipe I like it to be chunky. This is kind of like a Rice Krispie sort of treat / fudgy kind of option. So all I did is I mixed it with a little bit of rice syrup. You can use rice syrup or you can use coconut syrup. Since I was using a fair amount of coconut, I used rice syrup. But coconut syrup, you've probably all seen this. These are the lowest glycemic sweeteners. Okay? Lower than maple syrup, lower than honey. And then what I normally do is I boost it with stevia. So it's great, and texture-wise it's perfect. But it doesn't have much sweetness. So if you want it to taste candy-like, if you boost it again with a little bit of the stevia, you get more of that wonderful flavor. So that's what I've done. I've just mixed the rice syrup along with the almond butter, and I'm going to put in a little bit, and it says in your recipe vanilla, but I'm actually going to use almond extract. You can do either one, but I thought I like it a little bit better with almond extract. So I'm going to add, this is the almond butter balls. I'm always trying to come up with something creative, and half the time it isn't very creative by the time I come up with a name. But almond butter balls are, I guess, what I called it this time. I'm going to just add a couple droppers of stevia. And what I want you to know is you don't have to use stevia. You can use maple syrup or you can use honey depending on if you're in treatment. Because I know Dr. Jimsick especially wants his patients to be very careful when they're treating with stevia. So it's not like you just can't make this recipe.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Does our sensitivity to sweetness, can it be adjusted? So can we be on a hypersensitivity where we really like lots of sweetness because of the modern America, and
Absolutely.
we can actually adjust it over time?
You can, and you get to the point where you like less and less. And even these recipes are not going to taste it. The ice cream isn't super sweet, right? I mean, it doesn't have a super sweet. It's not the same. I'm just shredding an organic apple here because we're going to use the apple to add more sweetness and to add all the pectin and all the benefits. You know, apple season is right now. And I really believe that as we go through the different seasons, there's reasons that we need different things in different seasons. And one of the things about apples is the incredible benefit of that pectin and the vitamin C in an apple. So you can do a whole apple in here, you can do part of an apple, it's kind of all whatever you want. Again, I'm adjusting it a little bit based on how many people we have today. Grate a little bit more of this.
Do you have an apple preference, an apple
I
style
love
preference?
galas. Galas
Okay.
are one of my favorites. Whatever I can get organic. And you know, more and more orchards are going to more and more organics and apples because apples are in the dirty dozen. So they are ones that I try to always get organic. The ones I don't like that much are Red Delicious. They're kind of boring. You know, they don't have much flavor.
And the texture sometimes.
The texture, they can be mealy. I mean, they're okay. I'm going to use them. I might make those into fried apples, or I might make them into something, you know, where you could use that more as a filler with something else. So I'm just going to stir my little bit of apples in here. And then what I'm going to add are brown Rice Krispies. How many of you eat brown Rice Krispies?
I used to use them for recipes.
For recipes? Well, they do go snap, crackle, pop. So you can really, you know, put them in milk and use them, or, you know, whenever I say milk, you know, I mean coconut, almond, whatever milk you're using. But I love them to make treats. So we're going to go ahead and put them in here, and we're just going to stir it till we have like a batter. So I'm going to just stir this up a little. And, you know, you can put in cinnamon, you can put in nutmeg, you could do all kinds of different options depending on what you like. And I'm going to add a few more. I can tell just by texture what I want. And this is a little bit, that apple was really juicy. So I want to keep it so I can make some balls out of this.
So can you over mix the rice?
You can. I
Rice
want to
that
keep them
becomes-
kind of snap, crackly, popish.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm trying to come up with a texture about like this. Because what I'm going to do, let's get a plate. So we can,
Ellen, do you cook?
I
Sounds like
I watch
with
a
all
lot of
your
cooking-
questions.
I watch cooking shows.
Okay.
I love
A lot of the
cooking
questions
shows,
you're
too.
asking, I'm like, oh, I was wondering that too.
One thing I wanted you to know is the ingredients in this is organic brown rice syrup, and sea salt, and there is 0 grams of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that because, again, you're not adding to the sweet by going ahead and using, you know, the brown Rice Krispies. So normally at home, what I do is I make these and I pop them in the fridge, okay? And we're not going to have time to pop them in the fridge today, but so, you know, if you're doing it at home, you could definitely do that. And they also freeze. So you could do them, you know, frozen as well. We'll put out some for everybody to try and you get a feel for the flavor because they're just delicious. You also can press them into an 8x8 pan and go ahead and do them that way as well. So we'll get these out and then let them just harden a little bit. They'll kind of dry just a little, and that's why I usually put them in the fridge because then what will happen is that almond butter will kind of solidify even a little bit more. We'll get some out for you to try, even if you have to try them with a fork. Absolutely delicious.
Need help?
Nope, I'm just looking for my purse because I'm going to change gloves. So let me
Underneath the
put
table.
these around. Pass these around. Right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's
You
put
want me
these
to
on the
pass them around?
table. Let's put these on the
Okay.
table and we're gonna let them just kind of dry out. They'll probably dry out just a tiny bit too until we're ready to eat, and then you can grab all of them at once. However, I don't think there's any chance in the world I'm gonna get all that goop off those gloves. So poor Kirk is gonna say, well, she disappears off my video every 2.5 seconds, but I'm gonna grab some more gloves here and
So is the brown rice, did you get that at Kroger also? Or?
I didn't. They don't carry the brown rice Krispies. Georgetown does, and all the health food stores do.
Okay.
But I have been told by a little bird that the cheapest place to get the brown rice Krispies is Thrive Market or Amazon.
Yep.
You know, Amazon delivers everything and anything now. And so, you know, not that I'm like the Amazon queen, but hello, price does matter. So sometimes, you know, planning ahead, especially if it's something you use a lot. They also have, you know, the corn flakes that are made with the organic corn, and there's only 3 ingredients in those too. And sometimes it's nice, again, you talk about foods that make you happy or something you could have as a snack that's clean. That's such a nice clean one. So now we're going to take our same old blender that Elizabeth so graciously cleaned up for me, and we are going to make the quickest, easiest tomato soup you have ever seen. So I'm starting with the organic tomatoes. I'm using this one, happens to be puree. You can use puree, you can use diced. I'm trying not to make so much that we have so much left over. So I'm putting the puree in here. And again, tomatoes are one of those. If you use the organic, you are going to know the difference because it tastes so much better. Have you noticed that? And that is one thing that organic, oh my goodness, the difference in flavor I think is just stunning. So I only use tomatoes that are either out of my garden that I can or that are in season because nobody wants that kind of cardboard tomato out of the winter, right? They just taste horrible. They're not even worth buying in my book. Remember that when you're doing the purees or the diced, you're going to have more lycopene because it's thicker, richer, more tomatoes are used. I'm going to add even another cup of this lycopene by doing some paste in this. Of course, the paste is just cooked down even more tomatoes, but it does make a difference. And I buy, whenever they have these, and they do have them like the Simple Truth, sometimes 10 for $1, you know, and put them on the shelf. Because again, this is something you can make really, really fast. I'm going to go ahead and put the whole thing. Really, you could probably, since I'm making kind of a half a recipe, you could get by with a half a can. But I'm going to try to take a half a can home, so we're just going to put it in here. Okay. And I need my little spatula, which I don't have. You know, you learn over time. There are things that do make a huge difference. And I have this nice mini spatula that I can't stand to leave that good stuff sticking in my can, you know? I want to use every little bit of it. A little spatula is perfect for it. But unfortunately, every time I leave the house, I can't take my entire kitchen, which I think I try to do. So we've got that in there. And the library's going to charge you a fortune. No, I'm kidding. Charge you a fortune for the mess I'm making. Actually, it all ended up on my bag and not on the floor, so we're good. All right, so I have gone ahead and peeled a couple cloves of garlic, and I know that when you're on low sulfur, you can't do garlic. So for those folks, I would have them use Old Bay seasoning or one of the low sulfur seasonings that I have listed. But if anybody in here, ammonia, high ammonia right now? Good. Okay, so I'm going to put in a fair amount of garlic. I'm putting an equivalent to 2 really good sized cloves. We're making tomato basil, so fresh basil is available everywhere now. I love that Kroger carries it. I grow it all year long as it'll, you know, continue to grow. And I buy the plants are way cheaper. So I buy a plant and it usually lasts at least a few months. They don't last forever for whatever reason. But I'm going to take some fresh basil here, and I'm probably going to use about half since we're kind of cutting back on the amount. And then we want a little bit of salt flavor, so I'm going to use Spike. Do you know Spike? Does everybody know Spike? Spike is made by Modern Products. It has 42 different herbs and spices in it. It's a lot of good flavor. It's my favorite. I get it in bulk. Georgetown, what's that, the store I never can say the name of, that's the new one? They carry bulk, health food store. Fresh Thyme. Sorry, I can never say. They have the bulk spices. Sounds like, looks like. Whole Foods does too. Whole Foods is pricier. Maybe now that they become Amazon, they'll be less. I don't know. But Fresh Thyme, Georgetown, some of the privately owned ones are cheaper and they're bulk spices. So you go in and you just get dips of them. And that's really important because, you know, when you're trying to make things taste good and you want to use a good seasoning, you want to try to make sure that it's as fresh as it can be, as, you know, the flavor pops, and it's the highest quality. So I use the Frontier spices. You'll see them all over here. I have little bags like this everywhere. And I don't mind having them in little bags because the second that they're old, plop in the trash because they cost pennies. And then you start fresh because you want that flavor. You should be able to smell it clear out there when I wave the, you know, the pumpkin pie spice and all of that.
So is this Spike a Frontier spice? Mm-hmm. It's just a.
Well, it comes in bulk, and they always have it.
Okay, but that's the name of the spice itself, not the brand name.
No, the brand name is Modern, and
it's
Modern Products is the brand name, and then Spike is the seasoning. I'll put a little pepper in here, not much, because we don't really need a lot of pepper. Just add a little extra pop. And then I'm going to use, in this one, you can use either one. I'm going to go ahead and use the one I've already opened. But I wanted to be sure that you saw, too, that they have, you know, the aseptic ones. So aseptic brand is nice. $1 is what I paid for that one with a Woohoo sticker. So again, you know, I find all these aseptic ones that line the shelves. I may use more of the refrigerated ones if they're on a super duper sale and save these for when I can't find something on sale. But I go in and I try to find all different milks. Sometimes I do cashew. They've got a new nut milk called high protein nut milk. Mm-hmm. They've got cashew. They've got quinoa, the rice quinoa. My son, who's 22, says he loves the rice quinoa one. That's one of his favorites. So, you know, you never know what somebody's going to like. So we're just going to add a little bit of this coconut milk to be our cream. And I use coconut more than the others for this recipe because coconut has the texture to make it creamy and taste like, again, that wonderful cream of tomato. You know, I don't want to give Campbell's a whole lot of credit, but they have definitely made the market, you know, when it comes to some of the soups. Yeah. And even with their healthy requests, there's still a lot of junky ingredients and loads of sugar. So we're just going to blend this in the blender. If you, and I do it based on the texture. There it is. Based on what the texture is like, I'm going to thin it down just a little bit more because I'm going to get it to that nice, thin, creamy texture, but not too thick. I mean, we don't want too much. It would be too tomato-fied to the point where you don't even like it. So you can use your own good judgment when you're preparing it. And that's all there is to this soup. Once I get it in the pan, sometimes, again, I'll let it heat up because, you know, it does get a little less viscous when you're heating it, and you may find that the texture thins a little bit, but I want it to be the right texture so that it reminds you of that cream of tomato soup. So we'll let that heat up just a little bit, and it looks like it might still be just a little bit thicker than I like it, and I may add just a little bit more coconut milk, in fact. I can tell. And you know, of course, that I'm adding unsweetened and no vanilla because I think that would be really, really gross.
I did that once with mac and cheese.
I did it with mashed potatoes. Oh my goodness, it was horrible. Not even I could eat it. Not even a dog could eat it. It was just not good. So we're going to let that heat up, and that's kind of a really, really, really fast lunchtime treat. And I'll take that just a minute or two on my trusty little hot plate, and then we're going to eat. And while we eat, I want to tell you some more things, but I want to talk a little bit about a recipe that I made. And this recipe is called Meatballs for Every Meat. Now, how many of you have screwed up because you haven't had something to eat? You've got to go to a restaurant and you're stuck, right? Antibiotic-loaded meats, you don't have any protein source. So one of the things that I do very faithfully, I'm not that faithful in everything, but I'm pretty faithful about making these meatballs. These are made with turkey. They're made with organic turkey. I make them with beef. I make them with organic pork from our farm. I make them with organic lamb. I make them with organic buffalo. Did I go through? And chicken. And I put them in little Ziplocs, about 3 to a Ziploc. You know, those mini Ziplocs, and I put them in the freezer. Then I put them in my purse, literally, in the morning, especially if I know I have to go to a meeting and I have to eat out. Because you can go to a meeting, you can go to a restaurant, you can order a steamed veggie plate, right? I mean, almost every place you can order that. You can order a salad. You can order a baked potato or a baked sweet potato, but what are you going to do about the protein? It's so frustrating. So before I ever go in, I just pop those 3 little meatballs, and these meatballs are a 3rd meat, a 3rd grain, and a 3rd vegetable, and you can make them 100 ways. Quinoa, millet, oats. These are made with oats, and they're made with yellow squash and turkey. You can season them any way you want. Okay, you can put any kind of seasoning in, get them the way you like them. But I make them different ways, so there's a great rotation. They taste good. You don't have to have anything on them. You might want to sprinkle a little salt on them or whatever. But they taste good, and you pop those 3 meatballs, and you've got enough protein for the meal. And you're not cheating. Because sometimes, how many times has it been a meal out that has been the real turning point that's made you feel horrible, right? That's what always happens to me. In fact, our kids call us food snobs. They say, we're not taking you out to dinner. You never like anything. They're right. We never do. You know, I always feel like I wasted my money. I hate wasting money. And I feel like I didn't get nourished. You know, you come home, you're still full, or you ate way too many calories and you feel, you know, all bloated and gross. So these meatballs for every meat, for me, are like a godsend. And if you could just have them done, the thing is, I do them often on Sunday evenings, and then I do maybe 2 or 3 kinds, depending on, I put, you know, a tray of each one in the oven, they all cook together, they bake, you don't have to fry them, they take literally 5 minutes to throw together if you have grains. You prepare your grains ahead, like do you cook rice and cook millet, cook quinoa. I do that and put them in Ziplocs. Saves you huge amounts of time, right? Because of what takes the longest, brown rice, 45 minutes. Who can wait for 45 minutes for something like that to cook? Of course, you can use oats, you can use rolled oats, or you could use leftover cooked oats. If I cook a grain, I always purpose to cook more. If it's cream of buckwheat, I purpose to cook a whole lot extra because I'm going to make maybe something for breakfast out of that. I take the cream of buckwheat and I put it in a loaf pan, and you can slice it and make fried, you know, like fried grits. And I can put syrup over, you know, different syrups over. When I say syrup, I mean like blueberries that are sweetened with a little stevia, or a little drizzle of coconut syrup or something, or sorghum or something like that. So that's almost ready. So anyway, I always purpose to have as many things cooked ahead as I can. I made a lot of cookies, so you get a lot of cookies. One of the things that is very frustrating with breakfast is if you don't have anything available, what do? Well, one of the times that I feel like it's acceptable to have cookies for breakfast is if you make a really good healthy cookie, you know, because honest and truly what's in these cookies, I have sweet potatoes in these cookies, I have chia, I have hemp seed. How many of you are using hemp hearts? Anybody? Hemp hearts are really loaded with protein. They add a lot of boost of nutrition. So when I can get a good deal, these are raw hemp, and you can take a look at the nutrient value in a hemp heart. They are loaded. So I added hemp. The flour that I used this time, I used lots of different flours. I'll talk more about that with you when you get your food. But this time I used the gluten-free 1-to-1 baking mix by Bob's because they started carrying it in the bigger packages. It saves you a lot of money if you can get it in the bigs. And you know, the place that carries a lot of Bob's is Bob's Red Mill is oh fiddle faddle, what's the name of it? It's always by Home Goods and Marshall's. It's called
Nature's Farm?
No, it's like an overstock store. It'll come to me in a second. It's just you know, you never think of looking there. Can you pictures? Anybody go to Avon? What's the name? Big Lots. Big Lots. That's it. Big Lots.
Wow.
They carry tons of Bob's.
Do they really?
And they're not out of date.
Wow.
So it's not like you're buying old stuff.
Yeah.
But I have gotten things as much as half the price of like in the health food store. And I'm always looking for cheap. Cheap is always my go-to. Okay, our soup smells heavenly. Our scramble is ready. And I'm going to season that just a little bit. I'm just looking to make sure, you know, I might have done it maybe just a smidgen longer if I was at home and I was preparing other things. Here's our salt. You know, use good quality salt. This is sea salt. It's not my normal pink salt just because I was out, but it is an organic sea salt. Pink salt is what I normally use. Do most of you use the Himalayan or the pink salt? You get more
salt.
Huh?
I use the Celtic.
Celtic, same thing. Celtic, any of the good, really good salts are better. It's going to do a little bit of pepper, and of course you can always add some more if you want. I always get my pepper in bulk, but this was one of those that was on sale for $1, so it's like it comes in a nice can, it fits easy in my carry bag, so I can do that easily. Okay, let's get some food, and then I'm going to tell you some more about the recipes that we have. Put this one in here, and I'm going to give you your soup if that's okay. You have to eat a lot because, like I told you, I really don't want to try to take a bunch of this home.
Just a thought, even things like basil are very easy to grow from seed as well as plants. So I just have I have some large pots with dirt. When we buy the basil plant at the store, stick it in there, then I throw seeds around it. We've had basil since mid-April.
That's so awesome. And you know, there's so much to be said about growing your own. You know, there's always a benefit to growing your own. All right, come on up and I will put some.
I don't. You don't?
I don't. But
Do you like freeze it any kind of way at the end of the season?
you know, my wife she makes a lot of pesto.
Yeah.
So she needed a lot of basil for that. So every once in a while when she sees a bulk of it, she'll make pesto out of it.
Yeah.
And we do that with cilantro and other herbs too. They grow nicely in large pots.
Yeah.
Sure do. I'm going to talk about better butter. I'll tell you about that. But come on up and get some food so you can eat. Thank you, Elizabeth, so much for doing that. And there's all the silverware. And remember that tea should taste like a caramel apple.
Hey, so Jodi, are there oats in the cookies?
There are some allergic to oats.
I am, yeah.
Wait a second. There are oats in the meatballs,
You said.
not in the cookies.
Okay.
Not in the cookies. You caught me unaware there for a second. I'm thinking I did oats. I remember doing oats, but they're only in the meatballs. So skip the meatballs and you know you can do with those meatballs. You can do any grain you want. Yeah. So just send that home with Alan. So maybe there might be a little piece of saran wrap that I saved. I always try to save all that. You know how to worry about that. They can make those over there. Yummies. And if you need more seasoning, again, I didn't even taste the tomato soup. You know, normally at home I would taste it again. It may need a little bit more salt. Everybody has their own flavor profiles that they like, so we can always add.
I like that you put Old Bay on there. I love Old Bay.
Old Bay is a low sulfur seasoning too. It's going to be very, very good. It's actually low sulfur, so it's really a good help. Old Bay seasoning, you'll find it usually over by the seafood. And it's one that's been around for years and years and years, but has a wonderful flavor to it. I will put some of the big stuff. Dirty. Okay, well, while we get everybody's food, I'm excited for you to try and tell me what you think.
Great job.
Thank you, Jodi. I'm sorry that more people weren't here.
I'm not. No, the video will make a big difference because that also will reach out.
Yeah, right. People, here's more soup. I got more soup. Absolutely, that's salt. Just please help yourself because again, a lot of times, and especially if you're having do that you want soup.
That's good because I can make that.
Very good. Elizabeth, do you have soup yet?
Thank you.
Okay, you do now. I've got the bowl there and we'll see if we can get it. Doesn't it taste a lot like Campbell's?
Yeah, and it tastes like regular tomato soup, but
Good.
it's real creamy.
Do you
Maybe
need,
that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
It just gives you that.
No, I got them already.
So what I want to tell you a little bit about is with every one of my recipes, one of the things that I like to try to do is give you recipes that are like a skeleton, so you can fill in the blank. Because one of the most important things with Lyme is that we rotate our foods, that we get a huge variety of foods. So if we're talking about making a cookie like this, I didn't use eggs in this cookie because a lot of people are egg sensitive. I used chia guac. You know what I mean when I say chia guac?
No.
All you do is soak your chia seeds in water and it makes guac, and use a tablespoon of chia guac for every egg.
Good.
Okay? So it gives it texture. Now if you use eggs in it, it may be a little moister, you know, but chia adds lots and lots of extra flavor. It also sticks in your teeth, so don't be like me where you smile all day. You're on TV and there's a chia seed, you know, sticking right there. You know, chia is loaded with nutrition, loaded with protein, gives you lots of extra value. Because people always say, what kind of diet are you on with Lyme? And I say you're on the every bite counts diet. We want nutrition, right? We want good, solid nutrition. So what we're looking for is to make food count. And one of the frustrating things for me about this new gluten-free craze that we're on, where everything is gluten-free, is that there's tons of junk out there. There is. Now, I brought the tapioca flour because I want you to see it. This is, you know, Bob's Red Mill makes it. All this is starch. If you look at the back here, there is zero fat, zero cholesterol, zero sodium, 25 grams of carbohydrate, 0 fiber, 0 sugar, 0 protein. It is carb and carb alone. It is a simple carb. It is metabolized poorly by the body. Well, fast, but poorly as far as what it does. And see, what ends up happening is now they're making all kinds of products out of tapioca. That's all they're doing. It's just tapioca bread, tapioca pizza crust, tapioca everything. And I hate that because there's zero nutritional value. So why would we want to eat food that has zero nutritional value? Now, if you're using almond flour or coconut flour, it's dense, right? How many of you have cooked with it? It's dense, you know, it adds wonderful flavor, but the texture sometimes is a little tricky.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I'll add a little starch when I'm using one of those dense flours, and that's okay. Because we're not depending on the starch for the nutrition, we're depending on the rest of the ingredients, you know, for the nutrition. But all these people are telling me how they love these new crackers that are nothing but tapioca or starch. Potato starch is another one. So be careful. Read labels carefully. And I always talk about when we first started with all of the stuff with gluten-free, I was speaking at a gluten-free symposium, and I was getting ready, and I saw this line, and this line just kept getting longer and longer. Because all the people lined up to get the gluten-free donuts.
Oh, God.
And they were just junky donuts. They just substituted white rice flour for white flour. You know what I'm saying? So we want to be careful. We want to be really careful that we're not making the same mistakes the world is making, thinking we're doing it healthfully. So make wise choices in the flours. And there are several one-to-one flours. No problem. I use the Bob's Red Mill, gluten-free, the all-purpose. That's made with bean flours. There's Namaste. They're carrying that at Costco now, the big Namaste. That's basically brown rice. There's sorghum and brown rice in this one, in this baking one-to-one. And then you can take millet flour or sorghum flour or almond flour, and you can add a little of that starch and make your own flour combinations. So that to me is really, really important. Trying to come up with enough different varieties. And you know, an easy way to do that is just as you had in the old days where you had the canisters. Now I have 3 different canisters that are one-to-one flours. Whether I made them myself, meaning I added the extra starch and made the combination of flours, or I bought them. And I put them in those canisters. I do keep them in the fridge because if you've ever had mealyworms or moths, you ever had moths in your house? They're a bummer. They're really hard to get rid of. So remember that any of these organic grains are going to carry things like that if you're not careful. So I keep it in the fridge or in the freezer. But I put them in canisters, and then I know in my brain, especially if you're trying to juggle a lot of things in your brain and your head. Okay, I think one has a red top, one has a blue top, and one has a clear top. So in my brain, I might be able to keep track. I think the last thing I made was red top, so maybe I should go to a, they all work. You know, they all work the same. You take the same basic recipe and just change it up. This one happens to be sweet potato cookies. What else could you do? Zucchini, spinach, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. I am not kidding. You can put any vegetable in a cookie and make it as a breakfast cookie. Would you eat a couple of those for breakfast or send your kids out the door with a couple? See, there's as much nutritional value in that cookie and very little sugar content as there would be if you were making a muffin or a biscuit. So I want you to kind of think outside the box. What are quick and easy things that you could make ahead? And you know, if you're going to make one batch, make 5 batches. Ziploc, freezer. Now, I do have 5 freezers.
I was thinking that. How many freezers
do you have? Well, we also have meat, so you know that's
Yeah.
a little different thing.
Yeah.
But seriously, it doesn't take that much room to make ahead. And everybody asks me, what is the answer for people with Lyme, for people with cancer, for people that don't have enough energy, for people that are depending on others? If you can have someone come in and help you cut things up, because sometimes the vegetable chopping and some of that takes a little bit more effort and time. If you can do some of those little things and then you can make ahead. I mean, literally the basics, you're still going to have fresh vegetables and you're still going to have salads and things, but if you can do some of these like the meatballs, the cookies, the grains cooked ahead, that's going to be your salvation for when you feel crummy and when nobody's there to help you. She ran in. Well, come up and get some food, girl. That's awesome. Please, grab some stuff. So as I kind of put some things away, I want you to ask me questions because we're going to kind of put away and slide out of here. But I want you to ask me any questions you've had about preparing. Leanne, really seriously, I got tomato soup for you, and we've got
That's very good.
So Jodi, you just brought up a point that I don't think I've ever considered, the value, not that everyone has to go buy a freezer, but by having a freezer where you picked up meats that have been on sale, or you have frozen fruits and others that you've stocked up, can be really helpful so that you don't have to just reach for something else that you...
Exactly. How many times do we cheat? Because we don't have the right thing available. And that's where if you can just think ahead a little bit. And you know, maybe you only liked one of my recipes today. Well, I'm grateful if you liked one. You can change it up to make it yummy. I don't have any ice cream left, Leanne, but we make peach ice cream today. So you can change anything any way you want, because what we try to do with these recipes, again, is give you a skeleton. What would you like in there better? You know, what do you have? I teach a class called Something from Nothing, and what I do is I literally say, what's in the refrigerator? What can we make? You know? So what did you think about that scramble for breakfast? Do you think you could do something like that?
Yeah, that's good.
And you can see how easy that would be to change that up. You don't have zucchini, then put some cabbage in there. You don't have, depending on whatever you might like.
Can I see those hip parts?
Oh, you sure can. And this is better butter, by the way. How many of you make my better butter? Well, it's not mine. Actually, they make it now from, all this is organic butter, and this is whipped with grapeseed oil so that it is spreadable from the fridge. One of the biggest problems with butter is that you need a hacksaw blade, to get it off. Or you let it sit out and it becomes rancid fat. So when you whip it, equal proportions, cup for cup, or 2 cups is a pound of butter, 2 cups to 2 cups, it makes this nice spreadable butter. So what did I use in my cookies? I used better butter so that it whips easier. It's just so much easier to do and really makes a nice way to do any kind of baking. Who wants a little bit more soup? I got a little bit more in here so I can get it out.
So what else? What is the dark, like dried fruit looking thing inside the cookie?
Maybe
Isn't it the
chia, hemp hearts?
No.
Sweet
what'd you
potato?
say? The
I can't tell what it is.
sweet potato?
Yeah,
Or the
walnuts. It has walnuts,
It could be a
cinnamon.
walnut. Yeah, it's a little crunchy. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably just a walnut. And this sweet potato breakfast, by the way, when Leanne was saying, what are some breakfast ideas? What are some things you can do for breakfast? one of the things that I truly have found to be exceedingly wonderful is to do baked sweet potatoes with a little bit of crushed pineapple and some walnuts and cinnamon on top. That is a wonderful breakfast. Please take more of everything.
Well, I want to take more cookies.
Please. Grab some for the
Yeah, I have a
road.
little
I
more
know.
soup. Anybody that will
If nobody wants it, I'll eat it.
please. How about any other questions that you've had? Anything you've been having a hard time with?
No, I already.
You want a couple of these for tomorrow before church?
Yeah,
Yeah.
do it.
How about it?
Just eat it during church.
During
Sure.
church. Here, I have one more scoop. Kurt,
My kids.
I'm okay, thank
good?
you. Yeah, it was very good.
Elizabeth, any more soup? You're good?
Thank you.
I'm gonna
The
just-
soup is really good. I mean, everything is really good.
So, Kirk, you wanna stop?
Oh.
Any more drink?